of ending the suicide cluster. And right now, you can see Melissa Rose with Life Connections Counseling is joining us live on the Channel 10 Facebook page. Parents, students, please join the conversation happening right now. It's a place to ask those hard to talk about questions that could help save a life. John.
Beth, Melissa, thanks so much. We hope that conversation continues again online. And if you or someone that you know is experiencing thoughts of suicide, there is help available right now. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is open 24 hours a day.
Have Melissa Rose with us. This is tough stuff, and we appreciate you being willing to jump on. I've already had some comments, and Melissa and I have been talking about, there's so many different things going on with all three of the students, all three of the moms, and I'm just going to sit down with you and talk. All in different places, different scenarios. One of the first things, and I want to get to this because Carrie Holt brought this up. She has a child in college, and Kai and Sasha both were freshmen in college, one at UT, one at Appalachia State. Let's talk about that transition. It's tough for young people. Why is it hard, and what can we do as parents to help transition from high school to college?
Yeah, well, first of all, it can be difficult because even though we think about 18, the age 18, we are adults at that point, our brain is actually still developing at that point. So there's a lot of skills that are still kind of in the works, kind of those decision-making skills. So going off to college at 18 especially can be definitely difficult. And so helping with that transition definitely looks like opening that communication and keeping that line of communication open. And I would even encourage having another point of contact, whether it be a roommate, a friend, or someone that the parent can kind of also keep in touch with and say, hey, are they doing okay?
Yeah. But it's tough because I know Sasha's mom, Monica, she talked to her daughter every day, but you're not there to physically see the signs. But I know Monica shared with me that there were some signs looking back, obviously the sleep deprivation, but really wasn't as concerned with her appearance. Her appearance had kind of changed. What are some of the warning signs, especially for that time from high school to college, that, hey, my child may not be doing okay. I'm not there to physically see what's going on, but what are some things that parents should really take note of?
Yeah. Well, so first I want to say that as parents, I'm a parent myself. I have young children, but still I think we all have that intuition. And sometimes we try to push it back and say, okay, I'm not going to hover over them, and especially once they go to college, but trust that intuition. If you're feeling like your child is off, if something doesn't feel right, even if, they're saying they're fine, trust that and follow through with that. And if, they were previously getting mental health treatment, if they are on psychotropic medications, definitely follow up with them specifically on those things, saying, hey, are we continuing with those? Is there anything I can help with to, support you in that?
But it's hard because you're not there.
You're not, yeah. So just keeping the conversation open is the best, the best that you can do, really. And that's the hard thing because there's such that gray area, especially with young adults.
You're trying to give them space, you're trying to give them independence. They've begun their journey into adulthood, but they're still your child.
Right, absolutely. But trust that intuition because, if you're feeling like some things, if their appearance is changing or, their behaviors or they're distancing themselves, if you're getting reports from roommates or friends saying, they're kind of different, they seem a little more stressed than usual, follow some of those signs.
Well, Kai's mom, Christina, she knew something wasn't right. She actually had a conversation with him, I think the week before. He was really stressed about a grade, and she was able to talk through that with him, and they both felt better after getting off the phone call. Will's mom, Candace, they were concerned about sleep deprivation. All three of these moms say that sleep deprivation was an issue, and I'm a parent of a teenager. I think you see it in high school, you see it in college.
Absolutely.
Yes, they're studying, but this right here, has really, it takes their attention. They're dealing with social media. But before we talk about the social media, let's talk about sleep deprivation. How does that impact a young brain, a teenage brain?
So I always like to, compare the child's developing brain to kind of like a new house being built. And so when they go to sleep at night, the house kind of goes back under construction, and things are developing more, and the body kind of takes over. And so when sleep is lacking, if they're not getting enough sleep, then the brain can really can be impacted. Yeah.
I've heard it's almost like a computer. When the wheels start turning, it's like computer overload. And it's almost like your brain shuts down, and the ability to rationalize isn't there. And and I think all three young people, they just couldn't get past the reality, and couldn't understand that their current situation was temporary. They couldn't see past that. I know that's what their mom shared with me. Now, Whitney Elliott, I want to get to your question. She says, what if your child doesn't feel open or be honest about how they feel? What if they have a hard time sharing that? Are there resources for a child to talk about things they don't want to talk about with parents?
Yeah, I think that's a really good entry point for that trusted adult conversation. It's not just me. You don't just have me. You have all of these other trusted adults in your life, and really maybe compiling a list of who do you feel safe talking to, whether it be a teacher, a family member. Of course, the school counselor. All of those people can be great points of contact.
Good points of contact. Let's talk about resources. I know there are some places you can go for more information. What are the best resources out there that you advise parents to see?
Yeah, absolutely. So the CDC is a great place to go. They have some really good tips on parenting. You can definitely visit the American. I was going to say American Psychological Association.
Okay.
That's a really good one. Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network.
They've been very helpful with me, giving me a lot of information. So a lot of resources out there. We have a long format article on our website where we've listed resources and phone numbers, places where you can go and get more help, more attention. Let's talk about if you're a parent and your child says they've been thinking about suicide. How do you respond as a parent?
Stay calm. I think in any scenario, your wheels start turning. You start to panic inside. What do I do? But this is a great sign that your child has actually opened up to you, and they feel safe telling you that. They feel comfortable. Ask them questions about their thoughts and feelings. Ask them what they're thinking about. Is this the first time? How long? Those critical questions can help you gather the information that you're then going to take to a professional.
Okay.
And that's something that you want to do is don't harbor this and don't hang on to it. Definitely seek professional help.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be that the child isn't open to professional help, and that does happen. But try.
And
definitely try to
continue to monitor the child's behavior.
Absolutely, monitor. So supervising them in all aspects. So physically, kind of putting in like an open door policy can be helpful. Please don't close your door. I want to know that you're safe. Kind of doing a safety sweep of the house.
Let's talk about that. Like, what are some things to
So of course, any type of like knives, medication, things like that, you want to take out of like their direct access, and preferably lock them away. And of course, any type of like firearms or guns, in a locked cabinet, or maybe even removing those from the home. So
those are some. Well, let's talk about. So if your child comes home and says their friend has shared that they're thinking about suicide, what steps do you take as a parent, and how do you guide your child through that?
And this is one of those things that I would really encourage parents to do, even if your child hasn't brought it up, to say like, what would you do if your friend said this? And preparing this conversation beforehand so that they are prepared. But definitely encourage them to stay with their friend. Something that we don't want is someone who is suicidal to be by themselves or to be left alone. So, if they are, for instance, at school, maybe they could walk with their friend to the school counselor's office. If they're on the phone with them, if they're texting, they probably should call them, try to call them. And if they're on the phone with them, try to stay on the phone and keep them kind of talking. And of course, tell a trusted adult.
Yeah.
The one thing that I see most often in these kids is that they feel obligated to help and they feel obligated to save their friend. And that's just, it's not their job, that they're just kids.
Yeah.
So make sure they know that they need to seek out adult help.
And there's 2 crisis lines, a mobile crisis line in Knox County, 865-539-2409. That's 539-2409. There's also a suicide helpline. Again, we'll have these resources in that web script on our Facebook page. I also want to bring up a parent. Janet says, how can a parent teach their child how to channel stress and feelings of being overwhelmed? It seems like young people have more pressures than I think I ever experienced. The stress, the overload, the expectation, this perfectionism.
Yes.
And then you couple it and you throw in the social media and they're trying to live up to feeds that they see on Instagram and Snapchat. So how do we as parents teach children coping and how to handle these pressures successfully?
Yes. Yeah. Comparison, and it kind of never gets turned off, right? So, I think we all have felt that before, being at school and comparing ourselves, to others. But the thing with teens now is they have it direct access with them on their phone at all times. So they go home with it. So definitely, again, if we can seek professional help, that is ideal. Being able to, the child having a therapist that can talk with them, teach them coping skills, stress management techniques, that's ideal.
Well, and if you'll watch tonight at 11, I mentioned that we go into Farragut High School with Dr. John Bartlett. He's done a lot of research on suicide, and beginning in January, he is teaching every student at Farragut High School. He's combined 2 different curriculums, but he is teaching social, emotional learning, and brain health. He encourages his students every day to fail. Every day he challenges them to fail at something, and he stresses to his students, I want you to sleep, and sometimes sleep over study. And he's had several parents ask, did you really tell my child to sleep and not study? He said, absolutely, because if you're exhausted, your brain is not functioning properly. You can't retain information. And I know that, when we talked with Sasha's mom, Monica, I want to go back to the social media, because how important is it for parents, even teenagers, high school kids, to have conversations about social media? Sasha, according to her mom, said she just couldn't handle the constant comparisons. They never leave this. We could go home and escape friends and realities when we went home from school, but this generation today, it's constantly with them.
It is.
So what do you say to parents when it comes to social media and really being in touch with what they're looking at, what they're seeing, and how it's making them feel?
Yeah, and this conversation kind of goes back to brain development, because so often parents get caught in that tug of war game of, trying to set the expectation and then trying to set boundaries and limits. And the thing about it is, teenagers they can't wrap their mind around what we can. They don't know, and they can't understand from an adult's perspective of the large picture. So what they really need is they need boundaries set for them. They need limits set for them. That is the parent's job. And even though it sounds like, intrusive or like you're stepping over some type of boundary, you're not. Setting the expectation early is good. Having them write down their passwords is good. Having access to the, you would want to meet their friends, right? You would want to, before they would go over to their home. So it's the same difference of who they're interacting with within their social media,
Every day, engaging. What's
Yeah.
so and so doing, and we have a lot of conversations. Not that we're doing everything right. I need all the help I can get, but I try to talk about social media. And I also have conversations about why are you posting? How does it make you feel? When you
Right.
post something, what are you looking for in return?
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of ways, and it could be a way to really engage in your child. They say to really get involved and interested in what your children are interested in.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I want to talk about, let's see, some other things, and keep your questions coming. I'm not being rude. I'm trying to look through and see what questions we have and haven't gotten to. Let's see. We hear the word suicide contagion. What does that mean? First of all, I'll have you describe that. What is suicide contagion?
Yeah, it's just this kind of theory where when suicide happens within the community, whether it be within a peer group or kind of a large scale, within the country or wherever. It's just the idea that when a person is exposed to that, that it just kind of increases the likelihood of thoughts, or even if there already were thoughts, then kind of moving into an attempt. So it's not necessarily that we're saying that it's contagious. It's just this idea that it kind of increases likelihood.
You're exposed to it, right?
You're exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so the idea with this is, again, prevention. So if we have, a situation that occurs, like for instance at a school, then making sure that these friends and those peers that were kind of exposed, making sure that they are given some type of assessment to make sure that they're well, and if they don't seem well, to make sure that we further and refer them for mental health services.
And I will add this. I know that schools in Knox County, I think middle schools and high schools, especially the high schools, I think most of them do mental health assessments on their students throughout the year. I know they're bringing counselors into middle schools and high schools, really trying to be proactive, because I want to talk more about the prevention. How important is it to get your child help early?
It's so important. In fact, there are countless studies now that are coming out that says early intervention is key to positive prognosis. So really, there's no time that is too early.
Yeah.
And we're not going to hurt them by kind of sending them into services or getting them help if it isn't necessarily deemed necessary.
There's such a stereotype, and thankfully we're trying to break that when it comes to getting help, getting therapy. How do you start that conversation with your child? Because you don't want to make them feel worse, but it's obvious they need some help. How do you bring that up to your child?
Yeah, so sometimes being transparent, if you've ever had, as a parent, if you've ever had therapy services yourself, bringing up that can be a great point of communication. You can also talk about maybe figures in the community or celebrity figures that have received mental health services. Normalizing mental health is so key, because it feels so stigmatized. It feels, the terms crazy, is used, or, they feel like they're sick in a way, if they're being taken to therapy, but
because you don't want to make the situation worse. You don't
Right.
want to make the child feel worse about
and
himself or herself.
Therapy, me being a child therapist myself, if therapy isn't wanted by a teenager, it's not something that is going to be necessarily pushed unless there's a safety risk. Then that's a different ball game. But our number one goal is rapport and that therapeutic relationship. So we're not going to push your child into something they don't want to do, or make them worse for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to make this, or just read this comment from Judy. She works in a cafeteria at a high school and here in Knox County. And she said they've let their students know that they are there for them. And I think that's key. And that's something that we saw at Farragut. Dr. Bartlett really encouraging the student faculty to get to know students, and I think they have 1 or 2 faculty assigned to each student all 4 years, and not just a high every month or so, but really engaging, getting to know the students, developing a rapport, making sure they feel like they're loved, that they belong, and just someone checking in. But he says encourages the students too. It's all of our responsibilities.
Yes.
They're a family at Farragut, he says, and it's everyone's responsibility to take care of each other. But how important is it to talk about it with young people? I think some people are like, oh, you shy away from it.
Right.
You don't want to give anyone the idea. But Will's mom, Candace, was like, and especially if your child is struggling and having some issues, she says definitely ask the question, have you considered or thought about suicide? She said it might have saved Will had she known to ask that question.
Yeah.
I mean, she knew there were things going on. He wasn't sleeping. She took him to a doctor. But what impact does that have actually talking about suicide to young people?
Yeah. Well, I think, it's very telling that even when, the word suicide is used or the topic is brought up, even amongst mental health professionals, you can still feel the mood shift. It's a heavy topic and it's scary. So of course parents are going to feel kind of timid or shy away from that topic, or they're going to feel scared themselves to ask that question. What are their, what is their child feeling? What if they say that they have considered it? What are they going to say after that? But yes, bringing up the topic is so important because, first of all, you're not instilling the thought. I mean, that's a myth. They're not going to like have a light bulb moment like, oh, that's an option.
Yeah.
No, you're kind of opening up this doorway to say, I'm a safe person to talk to. It's difficult for me too, but I'm willing to go through that difficult thing with you, and I'm here for you. But also just opening that conversation. It may not be them, it could be a friend, it could be questions that they have. So, if they're not going to bring it up, then yes, the parent definitely should bring it up.
Something that I think of often is Christina, Kai's mom, her comment toward the end of the piece where she goes, what have I done? I've taught my child that if he works hard enough, he can achieve anything. And she says that's not always true. Life isn't fair. How can we as adults be better at teaching and showing our kids that reality?
Yeah. It's tough. It's totally tough because, as adults, we even have sometimes a difficult time handling stress and managing and modeling, right? But if we can model, that's the entry point right there. Being able to show that I can make good choices even under mounting stress, and if things aren't going our way,
and being open about it. Life isn't fair. Things don't always work out. I mean, how, as a parent, how
I really encourage transparency. I think there's kind of been this unwritten rule that parents are supposed to be like have it together and present to their children like, I don't cry, and I'm fine, everything's fine. But what are we teaching our kids, if we are handling situations like that? So rather we need to, again, model being human, right?
Yeah.
And if something breaks our heart, then, say, oh my goodness, that made me sad, right? Yeah.
And being real with the expectations, I think that's something that Dr. John Bartlett at Farragut High talked about, as he stresses the failure in teaching reality to kids. He says that failure is a huge teaching moment because that means you're one step closer to succeeding.
Absolutely.
And if we don't allow them to fail, we're not allowing them to experience that tremendous learning life lesson that can really stay with them and carry with them. So that's, that's so important. I appreciate everybody kind of logging on to the conversation. I'm trying to monitor a lot of your questions, your topics. I promise I'm listening,
You're good.
Melissa, but I don't
You're
want
doing
to
great.
miss anyone's comment or question. And I really appreciate, I can't say enough, the admiration that I have for the three mothers that I talked to, Monica, Candace, and Christina. These women, they are so strong and they are grieving. They have experienced the very worst in life. I mean, I can't imagine losing a child. And so it's still, they're still struggling with that reality, yet they have the courage and the strength to speak out because, I really admired Candace, even in the hospital room, after her son Will made the attempt. She went out to a room full of boys and she said, "You need to know Will did not make the right choice." But she went on to tell them, you have problems and I'll give you that. And those are real problems,
Yeah.
but they aren't problems that can't be solved.
Right.
And I think that's important. Is there anything you want to add kind of to that message with the problems and just how our situations are temporary and
Yeah.
we need to realize that?
Yeah, and I think just we can't lose hope,
Yeah.
because when we hear stories like this and it hits really close to home, it feels like, well, what in the world can I do now?
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, just, having these conversations, trying to meet them where they are and saying, I can't quite understand, but I'm trying to understand. Try not to minimize, but just be right there with them in whatever it is that they're feeling. Those things can go so far with a kid. Instead of trying to analyze and trying to problem solve, just being there.
Yeah. And just listening.
Just listening, yeah.
And then kind of let that guide the conversation.
Exactly.
And then when to get help. And if you feel if there's any sign, you say don't hesitate.
Don't hesitate, yeah.
Immediately jump in. And like I said, we've got an in-depth article online that has a lot of resource information, places where you can get help, phone numbers, hotlines. If there's, if you're at this moment, you need to talk to somebody. We have hotlines. Knox County also national hotlines where there's someone available 24/7 to take your phone call, to talk to you, to help you through it, and just to listen to what you're going through. And I think that's important to have that resource. Well, I appreciate everybody watching, and I hope that we'll continue this conversation. I don't know, Val, how are we doing on time? Do we want to, and Tom, do we have time to ask any more questions?
We should if we.
Okay. Forgive me. We're just taking this Facebook Live. It's not as it's a little more fluid, I guess, than watching on air. I appreciate everybody watching. I think it's so important, and we're going to continue to address this topic. This isn't just a one-day two-story, event. This is something that our community is going to continue to struggle with, and that's one thing that Dr. Bartlett talks about in his piece tonight. They can have a plan in place, they can do everything in their means, but there are no guarantees.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. But hopefully, by us talking about it, by us engaging, and by us all being committed, I guess, to help our young people through this, that hopefully things will get better. And again, as I know that Candace, Bannister, Will's mom, she has a Facebook page, she has a website. She knows the pain of suicide. She has a way to reach out to her. All of these mothers, Christina and Monica, they try to talk to parents all the time. They talk to young people. Will's friends have become family to Candace and her husband. They get together routinely once a month.
That's
They
wonderful.
gather,
Yeah.
they text. Christina's the same way. She has stayed in contact with Kai's roommate at UT and checks in on him and loves on him. And Monica, the same. I didn't share this in the pieces, but Monica's son was actually great friends with Will. So that family has really been impacted. So their daughter Sasha died by suicide, and then Monica's son was best friends with Will, who also died by suicide. So these families, boy, they are walking through this together. And really trying to hold each other up just to take the steps forward, I guess, to move on. So again, we appreciate you all watching. Tonight at 11, we continue the conversation. We go into Farragut High School where they're dealing with an awful reality, 6 suicides in 3 years. But like I said, they have a principal in place. He was at Bearden for 10 years. He went to work for the main office in downtown Knox County Schools and left there this year to come to Farragut. He felt called to help, and he's really doing some different things, some new things on campus, and we're going to take a look at those and show you the impact that he hopes that they will make. But that's coming up tonight at 11, and we'll continue to take your questions. Also, feel free to visit WBIR.com/thereality. We have a mini documentary on teen suicide. It's basically these 3 mothers in their words, kind of what they went through. We have the story that just aired on 10 News at 6 there. You can watch it, and then we'll have the 11 o'clock piece tonight with Dr. John Bartlett at Farragut High School. So we hope that this has helped you all. You can continue to reach out to us, ask your questions. If there's follow-up stories, email me. If there's something that we need to be made aware of or something to look into or a way that we can help our young people, feel free to email me, email the station. We want to hear your feedback. We want to know ways that we can continue to help our community deal with this harsh reality. But so appreciate you all watching. I think we're going to end things here on Facebook Live, if that's okay. I don't know if Tom, Val, is that all right? Thank you for spending some time with us. Thanks for sharing your comments, your thoughts. I hope we got to all of them. This conversation will be posted to our Facebook page on Channel 10. Feel free to continue making comments. We do read those. We will get back to you with those. But again, just email me if there's something else that you would like us to address or if there's something we need to know. So have a great night, everybody. We'll see you back here tonight at 11 o'clock with more coverage. I'll be on the 10 o'clock news on Fox 2. So thank you, Melissa. We appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
We appreciate
I'm so
what
glad
you
to
have
be
to
here.
say and your guidance for parents as we try to tackle this tough topic. The conversation continues. Thanks so much, everybody.